Today on Daybreak, the Pope has died, and 1.3 billion Catholics are mourning around the world. We check that out. Also, we check on how political parties acknowledged Easter over the weekend, and the media are getting a little bit concerned that RSE, Relationship, Sexuality and Education, is being changed. We check that out as well. Good morning. Good morning. It is Tuesday morning, the 22nd of April. You're probably thinking, hey, it's a Tuesday. Where is Simon with Solid Ground? Simon is away this week, so I'm filling in, and there's lots of news to talk about this morning. And of course, Simon was filling in for me when I was dealing with that eye infection, so it's the least I can do. Anyway, the big story, if you haven't heard, is that the Pope has died. Last night he died, which was Easter Monday. In the time zone that he was in. And the announcement was made. He was 88 years old. The announcement was made by Cardinal Farrell. Dear brothers and sisters, it is with deep sorrow I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis. At 7:35 this morning, that's on Easter Monday, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the Father's house. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and his church. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially towards the poorest and most marginalised. With immense gratitude for his example as a true disciple of the Lord Jesus, we commend the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite merciful love of the triune God, end quote. The Argentinian led the Catholic Church as Pope since March the 13th, 2013. So just over 12 years. And of course, that was following the surprise resignation of Benedict the 16th in February 2013. It's been interesting to see the wall-to-wall coverage by the media. Just feature news took up a whole news bulletin on News Talk ZB last night with just news about the Pope, similar to when the Queen had died and when Princess Diana had died. And I'm not quite sure whether it's based on his position as Pope. It's interesting that they're giving such focus to a religious leader, but the Pope always has attracted that attention. And I was interested to see some of the commentary. This is from LifeSite News, which is a predominantly Catholic-run news site. Wasn't as complimentary, said styled as the Pope of confusion by commentators. His reign was marked by a rapid diversion from Catholic teaching on numerous issues, with his pronouncements and writings leading to widespread confusion amongst Catholics on topics such as LGBT issues, divorce and remarriage, nature of the priesthood, role of the laity in ecclesial governance, adherence to tradition, and the permissibility of the traditional Latin Mass. However, there was some quotes that were listed, and these were actually in the New Zealand Herald. Once again, interesting the extent of the media coverage of the death of a religious leader. But here's one on humility. Pope Francis said in Pray for Me, it was pronounced at the end of every speech he did because he once explained, I am a sinner too. In 2013, he said, if someone is gay and is searching for the Lord and has goodwill, then who am I to judge him? In 2015, on the environment, he said, the earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth. That was one on the environment. He also commented on Donald Trump. He said, this is in 2016, anyone, whoever he is, who only wants to build walls and not bridges is not a Christian. And then when Trump returned to the White House at the beginning of this year, he condemned the president's migrant deportation plans as a calamity and a major crisis. On vaccines, Pope Francis urged people to get the coronavirus vaccine in the middle of the global pandemic in early 2021, saying those who opposed it were in suicidal denial. And finally, on mercy, he said in 2016, There is no sin that God's mercy cannot reach and wipe away when it finds a repentant heart seeking to be reconciled with the Father. Uh, and it was part of extending permanently his decree allowing priests to grant absolution to women who had had abortions. So, yes, the Pope has passed away, and now begins the whole process of the replacement. And look, I'm not Catholic, so I don't understand it. My heart goes out to the many Catholics who are mourning this morning. My understanding is that there's 135 or so cardinals that are going to gather in about 15 to 20 days, and they have to come up with a 2/3 majority. So 90 of them have to agree on the replacement Pope. And the world and the media, and we will watch that smoke blowing out. And when it turns white, then a new Pope has been appointed. It's interesting. One thing that I found interesting was that the media were quite behind on this, especially on the print newspapers. This was the Wall Street Journal that came out last night. They said, here's the front page of our newspaper. This was at 9 o'clock last night. Pope emerges from convalescence on Easter. And that's the problem with print newspapers. They're printed. In fact, I had a look at the New Zealand Herald, the hard copy today, and no mention of the Pope dying. So you can see the benefits of online news reporting because you get the most up-to-date facts. It actually leads me on to, how did political parties celebrate Easter? Did they even acknowledge it? The National Party started on Good Friday saying that it was all about safety, as though there was something dangerous about Easter. Drive safe this Easter. But then they eventually posted, wishing you and your family a safe and happy Easter. That's it, just words, happy Easter. Probably slightly better than the Labour Party, who somehow brought a dog into Easter. Not quite sure how they did that. The ACT Party went back to bunnies. Happy Easter. Enjoy your weekend, however you choose to spend it. Obviously, they're big on the fact that they want to liberalise trading. Everybody should be at the shops and drinking alcohol. And then we had the Green Party. It was just a light weekend, and it was a light weekend for light activism. Probably the best was New Zealand First, who actually showed some semblance of what Easter was actually about. And just to show how bad the other political parties were, the leftist organisation, the Human Rights Commission, even talked about wishing you a blessed Easter, and it recognises the crucifixion of Jesus and celebrates his resurrection. Blow me over with a feather. I mean, that's the Human Rights Commission. Just shows what a change of personnel at the top, what difference that can make. So that was how the political parties acknowledged Easter. Somebody who was getting in trouble about acknowledging Easter was King Charles, who of course is the leader of the Anglican Church, different to the Pope of the Catholic Church. King Charles, he shared an Easter message on Maundy Thursday, in which he said the world still needs faith, hope, and love. But he got into a little bit of strife because the report says, although the onus of the message is on the Christian celebration of Easter, the King's message has been criticised on social media over its nods to Islam and Judaism. He said on Maundy Thursday, Jesus knelt and washed the feet of many of those who would abandon him. His humble actions were a token of his love that knew no bounds or boundaries and is central to Christian belief. The love he showed when he walked the earth reflected the Jewish ethic of caring for the stranger and those in need, a deep human instinct echoed in Islam and other religious traditions, and in the hearts of all who seek the good of others, end quote. Responses on social media were strongly critical of his decision to include other faiths in a message intended for a Christian festival as important as Easter, especially in light of his official role as Supreme Governor of the Church of England and title of Defender of the Faith as Britain's reigning monarch. Right, actually, here's the Prime Minister of India, who actually acknowledged the true purpose of Easter, which was slightly different to our Prime Minister, who just sort of said Happy Easter in words and a photo of the family, which was, of course, in contrast to his video to Muslims as they entered Ramadan, and also his bowing down when he visited India. So some people saw a bit of a contrast there. In other news, the media are getting a little bit upset about the fact that the relationship sexuality education curriculum is being revised. And in their coverage over the weekend, they said that the feedback was that the changes were dangerous. Yes, now who said they were dangerous? Well, none other than Inside Out Managing Director Tabby Besley, who told One News that the LGBTQIA plus education and support organisations are incredibly disappointed that there's no mention of gender diversity in the draft. They want the transgender message included. Remember, they want it targeted at children as young as 7 years old. And so basically they've run off to Inside Out, and they've also run off to another academic from Canterbury, Tracy Cleland, who we've actually done some coverage of because she was involved with the Beyond the Birds and the Bees phone app for kids, which we exposed as being very extreme as well. Fortunately, the One News coverage did have some comments from Let Kids Be Kids, just to give some contrast. But the fact that they've run off to a radical organisation, I mean, Inside Out are panicking because basically they have made the whole RSE radical, and we've exposed it, and now it's being changed, and they're panicking. They have a vested interest. But it's interesting that One News have rushed off to them. Now, what else we got? Oh, yes, that decision last week where the UK Supreme Court said that trans women are not legally women because they're dudes. And what it means is, and this, you won't see some of this commentary. This is actually from the Australian newspaper, but you won't see this commentary, I don't think, in New Zealand. But what it's saying is that every organisation in Britain has been told to revisit its equality policies after the country's highest court ruled that trans women were not legally women. Organisations that had allowed biological men into women's spaces must immediately scrap the policies or face legal action. This is hospitals, prisons, and businesses. That means they will have legal backing now to protect single-sex spaces and to protect women. And the government will also come under pressure to repeal the Gender Recognition Act, which allows people to obtain a gender recognition certificate. So in other words, the change of birth certificates like we have here in New Zealand. Boy, it's all happening in the UK, isn't it? Now, you'll find the commentary always said, however, the 5 judges said the ruling did not diminish trans women's protection against discrimination. Well, that's true. They shouldn't be discriminated any more than I should be discriminated against as a man. And I'm not allowed to go into women's changing spaces or to women's toilets or to women's dedicated spaces. I'm not allowed to change my identification to a woman. I could try, but I'm happy to be discriminated against because that's life. And there are male and female. So the director of Women for Scotland said, if there is a female sign on the door, that is now a single-sex space. That is crystal clear as a result of today's rulings. And apparently a person wanting to change the sex on their birth certificate, they still will be able to, but only for the purposes of marriage. Well, gender has been thrown away from marriage anyway, hasn't it, with same-sex marriage, pensions, births, and deaths. So that's not exactly going into women's spaces. So women will be safe. So yeah, a lot of interesting thing. But here's the interesting thing. Over the weekend, there was this article in the New Zealand Herald. Fran O'Sullivan, a political commentator, why the UK Supreme Court decision matters for women's rights. This is in the New Zealand Herald, and it says, what is a woman? Just coming up with a simple definition initially confounded then Prime Minister Chris Hipkins when he was asked at a 2023 post-cabinet press conference. Listen to this sentence. The Hipkins question came after the furore over the visit by British pro-women activist Posy Parker. That is the first time the media have ever referred to Posy Parker as a pro-woman activist. Wow. There's been a cultural tipping point, even at the New Zealand Herald. Fran O'Sullivan goes on to say the UK Supreme Court has ruled that the terms woman and sex in the British Equality Act refer only to the biological woman and to biological sex. It's a victory for common sense. Wow, you could knock me over with another feather. I mean, for the New Zealand Herald and a political commentator to say that that victory was a victory for common sense, well, yeah, that is quite amazing. All right, that time went really fast, and I've run out of a whole lot of things that I was going to tell you. So I will be back tomorrow morning, same time, and we can cover some of these other issues. Did want to tell you briefly that we've posted an interview with Dr. Vodi Bokum. And we talk about some pretty controversial issues in this interview. He was in the country recently. We talk about critical theory, intersectionality, social justice, the LGBT agenda. Is there such a thing as a transgender or gay Christian? What about woke churches? What about Black Lives Matter? I tell you, it's quite the interview, and it's been watched by almost 7,000 just in the 24 hours since it's been released. So go to our website, and you'll see there Family Matters. And on McBlog today, just released a commentary about the RSC framework, which we mentioned earlier on. They are asking for submissions, and we would really encourage parents to respond and tell them what you want your kids taught or not taught under relationship, sexuality, and education. So all the guidelines on how to do a submission. It's actually relatively easy. And so we give you the link. So do that, especially if you're on school holidays. It is a shorter week this week, and so it's a perfect opportunity to do it. Right, that's all I've got time for, so I'm going to have to come back tomorrow morning, same time, 7:30, same place, same channel, and we will check out some of the other stories that I was going to tell you about. Anyway, until then, you have a great day.